The COVID-19 crisis is not the result of a single virus. No single virus could create such deep uncertainty and fear in our country. No disease could unleash such horrific ambivalence and such unspeakable loathing. No, we face the collapse of an economic system that has been so puffed up with air, so corrupted by derivatives and quantitative easing, so diluted by stock buybacks and other financial products cooked up by experts who know better than you do what is in your interest. In a word, the economy no longer has anything to do with our lives. It has become an ethereal realm, a kingdom of deception where the powerful live in cloud castles. This economy, if that's the right word for it, has nothing to do with us working people who try to feed our children. We watch helplessly as our country is being torn apart, all beyond our control, beyond our knowledge, and beyond our pay grade. The economy has collapsed, and we must rebuild it. But if we try to restore the rotted house that stood there before, our future will be grim. The Federal Reserve cannot print up jobs or print up clean air or print pristine water. In fact, as long as the government remains the prisoner of the rich and powerful, it cannot do anything at all. We must cut the strings of this devious puppet master. We must create a government and an economy of the people, for the people, and by the people. The currency that is driving the rapid transformation of our economy is the currency of fear. It spreads like a horrific virus, mutating everything that it touches into despair and uncertainty. It is a monstrous Midas that destroys all value and all goodness. And what about that check for $1,000 that they said they would mail you? Will the post office still be delivering mail? Will $1,000 still buy the same amount of food or of toilet paper in 6 months? Certainly, the investment banks that speculate in derivatives do not have to wait so long for payment, nor the fossil fuel companies destroying our environment. But we do not have to have the rules dictated to us by mammon. We as citizens can take control of our nation's economy, and we can transform it with our own hands. The transformation will not start in the cushy offices of a Senate committee, nor in the hip cafes frequented by bankers at Blackstone or Morgan Stanley. No, the recovery from this catastrophe will not be provided by those who intentionally created the crisis. Salvation this time will not be found by following the same bloated swine who led us to slaughter back in 2008. What is the economy? What is the economy? It seems like such a simple question as to be beneath the dignity of financial experts who strut out on news shows to tell us how things should be, who lecture us about interest rates and competitiveness while preparing their own nest egg in secret. Let us focus on this critical question, which we were supposed to forget about in the current panic. The basics of the economy have nothing to do with the complex equations produced in that pseudoscience of economics for the purpose of intimidating us. It is a profound farce that experts assume that a person who has not taken calculus is not capable of understanding economics. But the basics of the economy are quite simple. The basics of the economy are assuring that all of us have healthy food to eat, a clean place to live, and meaningful work to employ us that contributes to the well-being of society. In addition, there should be time in our days for artistic expression, for spiritual inquiry, for the care of our beloved family members and for friends, and for participating in our local community. As we know well, those whose lives are spiritually meaningful, those who love their work, who feel comfortable with family and friends, do not need to spend a lot of money or to live in a big house. The traditional value of frugality, however, has been demolished over the past 50 years. In its place, corporations have erected a shrine to the cult of the self, to greed, and to narcissism. That march towards moral decay is being led by the super rich today. I want to share with you a quote describing the very rich by the author F. Scott Fitzgerald. Let me tell you about the very rich. They are different from you and me. They possess and enjoy early, and it does something to them. Makes them soft where we are hard, and cynical where we are trustful, in a way that unless you were born rich, it is very difficult to understand. They think, deep in their hearts, that they are better than we are because we had to discover the compensations and refuges of life for ourselves. What is sold to us as an economy consists primarily of the speculative activities of the stock market and the sloshing of huge sums of money around the world by investment banks. And these bloodthirsty banks are not even run by people anymore, but rather by cold, ruthless supercomputers that calculate profits out to 20 decimal points. This false economy promotes mindless and depraved consumption. It demands of us that we must buy and waste food, that we must drive cars to get to work, that we watch pornography and buy frivolous cosmetics and clothes in order to be happy, in order to appear successful. This economy of appearances was cooked up by public relations firms and advertisers to make us, to force us to buy. Consumption is at the heart of this economic system, but no one is permitted to question this false idol. It is assumed that we must waste things, the more the better, every day, so that the economy will grow. Much of the money we pay in taxes, directly or indirectly, funds consumption-based corporations and encourages people to consume and thereby destroy the environment. That process brings little happiness, but it does downgrade our experience, crushing spirituality, personal relations, and degrading our lives into the pursuit of the superficial. Growth is the conjoined twin of consumption that represents, in a number, how much we destroy. If we look at the extinction of species, the warming of oceans, the poverty in our nation, we can see that there is no real growth. Yet empty skyscrapers and shopping malls keep being built. Plastics and meat are shipped needlessly across oceans in the pursuit of ephemeral wealth. If we define the economy in terms of growth and consumption, if we assume the only thing we can do to improve things is either to raise or lower interest rates, that means your love for your family, your moral struggle for a better world, your decision to be frugal, your decision to honor the traditions of your parents have no value. You are supposed to throw everything away to buy new things, fashionable things at the mall. There are other crimes lurking behind this false economy about which you must know. You hold in your hands those printed pieces of paper, what we call money. You have been told that they have value. You can exchange them for food or a computer or a lawnmower at the store. But where does that value come from? Why can you make that exchange? And why are so many of us dependent on corporations and not people to be provided with that money? In the old days, currency was backed by gold, and you could take your money in and exchange it for gold. But America gave up that gold standard a long time ago. The value of that money does not come from any contract, any agreement between you and your community. That money was made by the Federal Reserve, an ambiguous and unregulated organization run by private banks for the profit of a few. Your wages buy less and less because the bank creates money out of nowhere in that evil black box of finance. The destruction of your lives does not bother them at all. In fact, they are pleased to have you dependent on them. You are so scared of losing your job that you do not have the time to question where those trillions of dollars went that they created to pay off speculators after the recent crash. All the money they are creating out of magic has opened the door to hyperinflation. When hyperinflation comes, the cost of a loaf of bread could go from $3 to $10 to $100 or even to $1,000 in a short period of time. It has happened before under similar circumstances. The lying media will not tell you anything, but the writing is on the wall. The truth is that inflation for food and for services is already far, far higher than what has been reported for the last decade. You know this from your own experience. You do not need a Harvard professor to tell you. Money today is not anchored in anything. Its value is determined by impressions, by mood, and by culture. Money has value in that people trust the United States and trust a global system in which the United States plays a central role. If they cease to believe in the United States or in that global system, then our money will not be worth much. There are plenty of signs that such trust is dissolving as I speak. The bankers have tried to make sure the dollar keeps its value while printing money to line their pockets. They have employed two magic tricks. First, they have encouraged the use of military force and cultivated a culture of militarism among the people. Militarism allowed them to make trillions of dollars from the sales of weapons, the promotion of pointless wars, and a Pentagon that has become a black hole for money. The use of military force made the United States seem powerful, and that has, so far, helped to keep the value of the dollar up, even though it is backed by nothing. Even now, they are thinking of ways to start new wars to prop up the dollar. The bankers also tied the dollar to petroleum, working ceaselessly to make sure that petroleum is sold in US dollars and that the major producers of oil use the dollar for all transactions. This creation of value through the promotion of petroleum is criminal in nature. Petroleum is destroying our climate and dooming our children to a bleak future. Yet, sadly, petroleum defines our economy, forcing you to use throwaway plastics made of oil, forcing you to drive automobiles for hours, forcing you to use the electricity that their companies provide. Corporations pay off experts to pretend that polluting our environment, forcing people to wait in traffic, is natural. And the red blood of young Americans flows in foreign wars so that money can be printed with a black ooze of oil. The forced dependency on petroleum means that ordinary people have been devastated by obscure battles between the powerful. Enormous sections of our population have had their lives forcibly tied to the petroleum economy, whether they are building highways, working at refineries, or at gas stations, or at car repair shops. An economy of the people, for the people, and by the people. The economy has not collapsed. It has rather been fundamentally transformed so that it services only a tiny group of the rich. We face doom if we follow the foolish advice of economists telling us we have only the choices of raising or lowering interest rates, or of printing more money, or of printing even more money. The economy must be democratic and it must be participatory. All citizens must be provided with the knowledge about the true economy in a transparent manner through honest journalism. And they must be given the education necessary to understand for themselves how that economy really works. They must be provided the means to produce value, to produce goods and services that contribute to society, and the means to exchange those goods and services with each other and to sell to each other at the local and national level. But most such economic activities today are undertaken by massive corporations like Walmart. Corporations that make tens of billions of dollars for their owners while paying starvation wages to workers like you. Workers and consumers, as we call citizens who have no choice about where they shop, are not permitted to make suggestions as to how such markets, such restaurants and convenience stores or other businesses are run. You may work for a company like Walmart for a lifetime, but you will not be given any stock, any real ownership, and your opinions will be completely ignored. In fact, you will be encouraged to be passive, to think only about eating food, or about watching silly videos, or reading fashion magazines. That passivity among us is no accident. It was planned. The wealth of those running corporations is not the result of their genius or of their innovations. Those companies get massive loans from banks backed by you for decades at low interest rates or sometimes no interest at all. With that money, they can put smaller competitors like you or the mom and pop stores that your mother and father ran out of business in a brutal manner. Truth be told, if the big retail chains did not have all that free money, their inefficient, wasteful, and corrupt stores could not compete with a healthy local economy run by the people. And remember, when those banks, which are neither democratic nor transparent, print up their own money out of nowhere, they thereby reduce the value of your money. But there can be an economy which brings great richness without ecological or spiritual devastation. We can build houses that last for 500 years. We can use furniture that lasts for 100 years and wear clothes that last for 30 years. We can find infinite truth and meaningfulness in a printed book that is passed down to us from previous generations. We can share tools and skills with our neighbors and thereby reduce our expenses while improving our health. We have no need for a destructive fourth industrial revolution that uses AI to render us docile. If we had a democratic economy, you would have as much right, more of a right, to get a loan than Walmart does. If you wanted solar panels or a windmill that allowed you to generate your own energy and thereby save our planet, and thereby be independent from the oil companies that prey on us, then the bank, which you would own stock in as a member, would lend you money, all the money you need, via low-interest 50-year loans. That would make wind power or solar power cheaper than the dangerous fossil fuels that the banks want to pour down your throat. There will be no more of the brainwashing perpetuated on us by advertising firms that encourage narcissism, the cult of the self, and mindless consumption. That dangerous business has destroyed families and has torn our neighborhoods apart. A lot of us, most of us, are now unemployed. I am unemployed. We find ourselves under lockdown at home, and I report to you from home. We are made even more dependent on a corrupt government. Suddenly, we need someone to send us a check to help us buy food. This is the first stage of a slave economy. My words are harsh, and many don't want to hear them. They want to dismiss such talk as the blather of conspiracy theorists. But this is where we find ourselves today. What do we do? There are two critical steps to creating a democratic, participatory, and sustainable economy. First, we need to organize ourselves at the local level to create real villages made up of the members of our community. We will transcend ethnicity and culture, working together for the common good. Those communities will create their own value and plan their own activities. They will not let multinational banks and corporations interfere. Eventually, we will create our own banks and our own cooperatives that are entirely independent. The first step will be to sign a contract between the individual members of our communities and hold a series of meetings for us, where we, not overpaid politicians, start thinking for ourselves about what really needs to be done and how we will do it. The second step will be to create local, national, and international institutions in government and in civil society that will protect the efforts by citizens from interference by the rich and the powerful. The government must be transformed into an institution that can seize the trillions of dollars squirreled away illegally by the rich, and that can assure that the decision-making process in our nation is never for sale. But we must not be naive. Governments can be used to restore democracy and equality, but they can be used and have been used just as easily for nefarious purposes. Moreover, even the bravest reformers can be overwhelmed or put in a gilded cage if they try to make revolutionary changes or even just little improvements in a corrupt system. We will not be able to implement policies at the national and international level unless we have powerful support from citizens at the local level who are organized and who are informed. They will not be organized for some fleeting election, but rather to fight for an honest and just economy every day. Our participatory and democratic groups will create our own economy, one that is honest, transparent, and ethical. We do not need and we do not expect approval or support from Washington or from any authority figures. If your organization is administered like an ethical and committed, caring government, then the so-called government will start to learn from you and to take inspiration from you. That would be a far, far smarter way to change our country than to elect some magician. Unlike the United States of 60 years ago, most of us have literally no means to produce food or furniture or tools locally. Many of us don't even know how to cook anymore. All that was taken away from us during the abominable rites to satiate the dark gods of technology and globalization. We buy unnecessary items because the media tells us we must be more fashionable, more modern than our neighbors. We do not recognize the authority of banks, of billionaires, or other elite players to create money out of nowhere and sprinkle it on their friends. This time, we are not going to bail out those criminals. No, my administration is going to confiscate all their assets that they have amassed illegally and cancel all that fake money they have created with their pals at the Federal Reserve. Truly, fellow citizens, the party is over. We will build an economy that is shared between us, the citizens, an economy that we create and we develop at the local level and the national level through cooperation with other citizens here and around the world. People like us. You know much better than elite bankers who speculate in futures and in foreign currencies what is necessary for a healthy economy and for your community. I am certain that once you are in the driver's seat, you will feel a deep sense of commitment to help your children and your neighbors. If there is profit to be made from the food you eat or from the tools that you use, that profit should come back to you, to your children, and to your neighbors, and should never go to speculators. And what about this COVID-19 pandemic? It has become a bonanza for the rich and the powerful while you were locked down at home. America's richest have added another $280 billion to their pile as many Americans find themselves locked down, facing the real possibility, for the first time since the 1930s, of starvation. But please, Mr. Banker, don't get me wrong. I completely understand your position. You made such a fortune from COVID-19 that I'm sure you can hardly wait for COVID-20. You would love more and more vaccines for viruses, but definitely not for parasites. Let me close with a few words about our campaign. A close friend asked me the other day where our funding comes from. She said that it must be impossible for an independent, especially one who is not powerful and popular with the rich, with the lobbyists and the consultants. It must be impossible to raise the money required for a presidential campaign. This is what I told her. I discovered a remarkable fact the other day. I discovered that the most valuable thing in the world is truth, and that although one may pay a terrible price for truth, in monetary terms, the truth is absolutely free. In fact, the truth will set you free. Thank you for your valuable, valuable time.